Welcome to r/Payback. The moment I saw it, I knew it was mine. Elegant, timeless, and shimmering faintly in the light. The dress was everything I'd dreamed of and more. It was on a flash sale, tucked away in the corner of a boutique's website, almost like fate had placed it there for me to find. Marked down from nearly $1,000 to just $215, it felt like a miracle. My heart fluttered as I clicked "Buy now," imagining the way James's face would light up when he saw me walking down the aisle in it. The days that followed were filled with anticipation. I told my sister, my mom, and even texted a blurry picture of it to James with a teasing "no peeking." The box arrived 3 days later, perfectly sealed. I didn't open it right away. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment. I envisioned standing in front of the mirror, music playing softly in the background, maybe even a glass of wine in hand. It felt like a turning point in our engagement. We'd been saving, planning carefully, keeping things low-key. This dress felt like a little splurge of magic. I stored it carefully in our guest room, unopened but cherished, like a secret I was saving just for myself. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I decided to finally try it on. The light was perfect, soft and warm, and I'd cleared out the guest room mirror for the occasion. I opened the box, carefully pulling out layers of tissue paper, and there it was, every bit as beautiful as I remembered. But as I lifted the hem, something caught my eye. There, near the bottom of the skirt, a stain. My heart skipped. At first, I thought it was a shadow. I turned the dress slightly, trying to shake it off, hoping it was just poor lighting. But the shape didn't shift. It was real. A small, dark splatter, dried, slightly crusted, and disturbingly out of place. My fingers trembled as I leaned in. It was faint, but definitely there. My mind raced through excuses. Maybe it was dust from the shipping box? Maybe I'd spilled something without realizing, but I hadn't even worn the dress yet. It had stayed sealed in the guest room since it arrived. I dropped the hem like it had burned me. A pit formed in my stomach, slow, heavy dread curling its way through me. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stare. There was something profoundly wrong about this. Dresses don't just arrive stained, not like this. And I had pictures from when it first arrived, clean, untouched. Something had happened to it after it got here. The hours after I found the stain were a blur of spiraling thoughts. At first, I convinced myself it was food. Maybe I'd had something in my hands the day the package arrived, but I hadn't. I'd barely touched it, too scared to damage it before the big reveal. Then I considered the cat. Hermes loved napping on soft fabrics, but this wasn't fur or a hairball or anything remotely cat-related. I cleaned the area gently with a damp cloth. It didn't move. The fabric remained stubbornly discolored. I took out my phone and compared it to the first photo I'd taken when it arrived. Clean, crisp, absolutely no stain. I zoomed in on the new photo. The pattern was odd. Not a splash or drip, a splatter, random, scattered, like something had burst onto the fabric. That's when the horror started to creep in. It didn't smell like food. It didn't look like wine or dirt or anything else I could rationally explain. It looked biological. A thought I didn't want to say out loud formed in my mind. Could it be? I recoiled. No way. I was overthinking. But the shape, the texture, the location. I suddenly felt nauseous. I washed my hands 5 times, scrubbing like a surgeon. I felt dirty, violated, and, worst of all, watched. Because if this didn't happen during shipping, and it didn't, then someone in this house had seen the dress. Someone had done something to it. And the only person who'd even been in that room, other than me, was James. Or his brother Dan. And that was a possibility I wasn't ready to face. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of the stained fabric haunted me, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I lay in bed beside James, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to tell him, to wake him up and scream someone violated my wedding dress, but the words wouldn't come. What if it wasn't what I thought it was? What if he didn't believe me? Or worse, what if it was someone close to him? Dan. James didn't have the closest relationship with his brother, but they'd been reconnecting lately. Dan was the golden child of the family, the hometown football star, charming and successful. Everyone adored him. I'd always thought he was harmless, maybe a little arrogant, but never dangerous. And yet, the thought of saying it aloud, of even suggesting what I feared, felt impossible. What if I was wrong? What if I destroyed a family over a misunderstanding? But shame kept crawling beneath my skin. I'd touched the stain with my bare hands. I'd washed them a dozen times since, but still felt filthy. I couldn't look at the dress without feeling like it had been tainted. I had been tainted. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. Instead, I was carrying a secret so revolting it made my stomach churn. Still, I stayed quiet. For now. The next morning, I sat at my desk and opened Photoshop. I'm a concept artist. I know my way around digital tools. I pulled up the original photo I'd taken when the dress arrived, the one I sent to my sister with a dozen heart emojis. Clean, not a single mark. I adjusted the contrast, the shadows, played with the exposure and saturation. Nothing. The dress was flawless in that image. I took a new photo, replicating the angle, the light. Then I overlaid them. The stain was new. There was no denying it now. It happened after the dress arrived. Only a handful of people had even been in the house since then. My sister hadn't visited in weeks. James's parents were away, and James had been home every day, except one. 2 nights ago, Dan had come over. James told me they were catching up. Dan had stayed for dinner and hung around for a couple of hours. I remembered because I'd fallen asleep early that night. I hadn't even said goodbye when he left. I asked James later, as casually as I could, whether Dan had seen the dress. He said yes. He'd shown him where it was, told him it was hidden away in the guest room, then gone to order takeout. Alone. Dan had been alone with the dress. Something cold settled into my chest. The timeline added up. The access, the arrogance. The way Dan had always complimented me just a little too much. It was him. It had to be. By the time I sat James down, my hands were shaking. I'd rehearsed the words in my head 100 times, even wrote out a script. But the second I opened my mouth, they vanished. "I need to tell you something," I began. He immediately looked concerned. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath and pushed forward. "It's the dress." "The wedding dress?" His brow furrowed. "What about it?" "There's something on it." My voice cracked. "A stain. And I don't know what it is, but it's bad. It's really bad, James." He blinked, confused. "Did it arrive that way?" "No." I pulled up the photos. "It was clean when I got it. I checked. I edited the photos. I know it was clean." Silence. I could see the gears turning in his head. "I didn't touch it," he said. "You know I wouldn't." "I know," I said quickly. "But you told Dan where it was." He froze. "Dan was alone with it," I said softly. Something in James shifted. His face, normally calm and steady, twisted with something I'd never seen before. Rage. "He what?" I showed him the stain, the splatter, the photos. He turned red, fists clenched at his sides. "This is disgusting," he muttered. "Absolutely firing disgusting." I nodded, tears welling up. "Do you think—" He stopped himself, then asked, Do you think he— I don't know, I whispered, but I can't wear it anymore. James didn't say anything for a long time. Then, I'm going to talk to him. The tension in the room felt suffocating. I wasn't sure what scared me more, what Dan had done, or what James might do now that he knew. Later that evening, James and I sat together, the weight of the stain still heavy between us. He finally began to open up about Dan, things I hadn't known before, things that chilled me to the bone. "Dan's never been the guy you think he is," James said quietly, running a hand through his hair. "He's got this twisted sense of entitlement, especially toward women. He talks like they're prizes, objects to collect or conquer." I listened, stunned. He's always been this way, but he hides it well around most people. Charming, funny, all that. But behind closed doors, it's a different story. James told me about how Dan had led multiple women on at once, bragging about it like it was a game. How he'd mocked James for being less attractive or less popular, and how he resented that I'd chosen James, someone Dan saw as less impressive. "He thinks he deserves the best of everything, including you," James said bitterly. Hearing this, something inside me shattered. The person I'd thought was like a brother had been harboring jealousy and resentment all along. Worse, I was now the target of his cruel games. I wanted to scream, I wanted to cry. But mostly, I felt violated, as if my personal space, my future, my happiness had been invaded by someone I trusted. This wasn't just about a dress anymore. It was about everything I thought I knew. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I felt dirty and exposed, as though my dignity had been ripped away. Dan wasn't just a stranger. He was family. The brother I never had. Someone I believed was on my side. How could I face him now? I started questioning everything. The wedding, James, even myself. Could I trust the people around me? Was this betrayal a sign of deeper cracks in my life? The dress that once symbolized hope and love now represented pain and disgust. I felt overwhelmed by shame and anger, unsure if I even wanted the wedding anymore. The thought of walking down the aisle surrounded by people who might be pretending to be supportive felt unbearable. But James stayed by my side, reminding me that I wasn't alone, that together we'd get through this. Still, the fear lingered. How would we rebuild trust? Could we ever move past what Dan had done? James decided to confront Dan directly. I wasn't there. I couldn't bear to watch. But I heard everything through the doorbell camera. Dan's voice was loud and mocking, filled with arrogance. "Is OP sure she wants to marry you? There are better options," Dan sneered. His laughter echoed, cruel and cold. James's tone was firm but controlled. "You know what you did with the dress. That was disgusting, Dan. Do you have any idea what you put her through?" Dan just laughed harder. "It's hilarious you're so worked up. It's just a dress. If she cared more about the marriage, she wouldn't be so upset." He went on, calling OP a low-value female and mocking James for being unattractive and lazy. His words cut like knives. Then came the confession, clear as day on the camera. James's face turned red with fury. "You're done, Dan. You're not welcome here anymore. If you ever come near her again, there will be consequences." The family was in shock. Dan's parents were devastated by the revelation, unable to believe their golden boy could act this way. The doorbell camera footage became undeniable proof. There was no room for denial. Dan was forced out of the house, uninvited from family events, and told he had to seek help if he wanted any chance of reconciliation. For the first time, the family saw the real Dan, and it was far from the brother, son, and athlete they'd thought they knew. The fallout from the confrontation was swift and intense. James's parents, who had always been proud of their golden boy Dan, were devastated to learn the truth. Their disbelief quickly turned into disappointment and anger. "It's not the son we raised," James's mother said quietly, tears in her eyes. They immediately cut Dan off. No more calls, no more visits. The family had made it clear. His actions were unacceptable and would not be tolerated. Meanwhile, I was surrounded by support. James' parents, as well as my own, rallied around me. They assured me I was not to blame and that they would do everything they could to help protect me. Their kindness was a lifeline in an otherwise dark time. "Whatever you need, we're here," my mother-in-law told me. "This is your day too, and we want you to feel safe and loved." Knowing I wasn't alone helped me breathe easier. The people who truly cared were stepping forward, not to judge or blame, but to heal and rebuild. After all that happened, James and I agreed to cancel the traditional wedding we had planned. The idea of a big, formal event felt too overwhelming, too much pressure, too many eyes. Instead, we chose a quiet, intimate ceremony at the local town hall. Just close family and a few friends. A day focused on us, our love, and the future we wanted to build together. No fancy dress code, no huge guest list. Just simplicity and sincerity. "It's exactly what we need," James said, squeezing my hand. "Something real, something ours." We both felt relief. A fresh start without the weight of expectations or painful memories. The big celebration would come later, a joyful party where everyone could share in our happiness, but on our terms. My sister and mother-in-law took on a special project, making me a new dress. This one wasn't about tradition or perfection. It was about healing, strength, and moving forward. The dress was simple but beautiful, crafted with love and care. They included a cape and a flower crown instead of a veil, symbols of freedom and new beginnings. Wearing it, I felt a sense of empowerment. This dress was mine, a shield against the past, a promise to myself and James that we'd rise above the pain. It wasn't just fabric and thread, it was hope woven into every stitch. Unfortunately, Dan didn't disappear quietly. One night, he stalked around the house and urinated on the flowers in the front garden, a humiliating, spiteful act. I immediately contacted the police and documented everything: security footage, text messages, photos. I wanted to be prepared for whatever might come next. The police assured me they would keep a close watch and take action if he returned or made trouble. I also started reaching out to the women Dan was involved with, warning them about his behavior. If I could prevent even one person from being hurt, it was worth it. Setting these boundaries was painful but necessary. I refused to let fear control my life. I was done being a victim. It was time to take back my story and protect what mattered most. That wraps up today's episode of r/Payback. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories.